We're all going to have a tape measure, but let me share 5 tips that might help you get some more use out of yours. If you've got an odd size board, but you want to find out where the center point is, you can use your tape measure. For this one, I've got no idea what the center point's going to be without some really tricky maths. But if I'm using inches and I just spin this tape measure around to the 16 inches and hold in there, half of 16 is quite easily 8 inches. That is now a very accurate center line for that board. If I want to divide this board up into 3 equal spaces, again, that's some tricky numbers. If I bring my tape measure around and bring it so it's on 18 inches, then we can do a line at 6, 12. We've now got 1, 2, 3 equal sections. If you want to check a board to see whether it's dead square, then rather than just using a square on the corner, what we can use is your tape measure, but measuring diagonals. So if we get the center point of your tape and clip him on the edge of your board, if I drag it down here and measure that in millimeters and then flip it to the other and measure it in millimeters, if they're both the same size as, and they are, it means that board should be square. But it doesn't always mean it is square, because it could be what you actually have is something which is a trapezoid. I think you can see that isn't square, but that diagonal and that diagonal could be exactly the same. So what you need to do now, we know our diagonals are the same, but also we need to actually measure across the board to make sure it's the same width at this point as it is at the top. If the diagonals match and these match, then it really is square. If you want to make a parallel mark on a board, not fantastically accurate, but what you can do is bring your tape measure out to whatever size that you want, clip your tape measure on the edge, and then bring your pencil down here to mark out a parallel line. Plasterboarders use this an awful lot, but rather than using the pencil, they will actually use their knife. You may use the edge of the tape measure, or you might just pinch your finger and thumb to the width you're looking at and then put your knife on there and cut through. They'll cut through, they'll snap the board over their knee, and they're good to go up to the wall. If you have to measure an internal dimension, sometimes you can get it, your ruler can sit there and we can measure here to that 400 millimeters. Otherwise, you may have to just bend your rule into this corner and see where that 400 millimeters is. Another way of doing it is that you bring your tape measure in, you measure to your 200 millimeter line, then you flip your tape measure around, and then you can add your two 200s together, and we know we've got the overall of 400. If you wanted to measure and try and find a center line of a board, one way of doing it is to measure the overall length of the board. I've got a really odd number here in inches, 27 1/4. If I take my tape measure and bend it round so I finish at the 27 1/4, and if we then start looking in the center of the curve, that is 13 5/8. That is pretty good for center. Always worth checking it. So if I bring this back to 13 5/8 and do a line and come from the other one, 13 5/8. Center of those two lines is dead center of the board. Those were my top tips for the tape measure. I hope you enjoyed them. Write in the comments any thoughts and any things you do with your tape measures as well.